Welcome to the Tribe Digital Marketing Series. Today, I am joined by Sangram Vajre, the co-founder of Terminus. Sangram, thanks for joining.
Thanks, man. Excited to be here. Long time.
Yeah, it has been a while. You always interview Justin. You got to have, a little variety in your lead MD action, right?
I do. I think, and even with Justin, I think it's been a long time since I actually connected with him too, with everything going on. So I think this is a good thing for me to now. All right, I need to do more reaching out of people.
Perfect. You're low on your lead MD quota, so we'll help you fill it today.
Let's put it up.
All right, I like it. So there's a topic that I've seen you post about and one that I'm really interested in right now, and that's the idea of translating marketing to the rest of the C-suite.
Yeah.
And there's all sorts of metrics out there. CMO still has the shortest tenure of all the other C-suite folks. CEOs are still asking, where are my leads? We're still getting all of these really bad indicators that marketing is not quite up to the same level. What do you think is one of the biggest problems in that, explaining marketing to the rest of the executive team?
I think marketing and a lot of CMOs, a lot of times, believe it or not, I mean, it might be shocking and surprising to a lot of those who are in that role or aspire to be a CMO at some point in their life, is that they're not talking business outcomes. And they're not talking about business metrics. So if you are a CMO today or aspire to be a CMO today, and your board deck that you are planning to put together includes traffic to the website,
Right.
Open rate, click-through rates, number of leads, number of events and spend, and a little bit of conversion data on landing pages, and some of those things. Oh my gosh, like I think you're gonna be roasted, and
They just don't care.
right? Like none of it matters at all.
All right.
And a lot of first-time CMOs that I mentor, I think that's where they get dinged, and that's where their biggest challenge becomes, because they're typically a great content person or product marketing person or
Right.
demand gen person, and they became at a higher level, and they feel like more data and more metrics matters, and it couldn't be further from the truth. So what I've seen work in the companies that actually do that is where everything is business outcome driven.
Mm-hmm.
The priorities that CMO has are the priorities that CEO has, like 100% of that.
Yep.
They have one of the strongest relationships with their CFO, CRO, and CEO. Those are the three relationships that most marketers don't think about building,
Right.
Building in. If you're aspiring to be one, you got to know your numbers with your CFO. You got to know the pulse of your sales team's sentiment. They can get you fired. If the board asks the sales, hey, how's marketing doing? If he or she says, I don't really know, and they're not really helpful, you're gone, right?
Yeah, that's not a good sign.
We can jump into all of those, but I feel like there's this inherent challenge of recognizing that whatever you present to the board and all those folks is what you're going to be asked questions on. So be very, very insightful and thoughtful and intentional about what you present to the board and the executives.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting because still to this day, we're not seeing a path from marketing to CEO. I mean, it's a pretty rare occurrence. Most CEOs are coming up through finance or sales or operations or development, even, depending on the type of organization. So there's this inherent disconnect between what marketing does and the rest of their peers. And as a marketing company ourselves, we're seeing a lot of our projects now get to that CMO and then funnel over to the CFO. So now we have to translate that into, balance sheets, ledgers, profit and loss, ROI, all that kind of stuff. So what are some of those conversations with you having the folks you're mentoring to start to think like a CFO thinks? Yeah,
that's a great question. And I'm going to give a little bit of argument for people to have fun listening to this.
All right, let's do it.
Is that in many ways, I feel like the CMOs, as they're thinking about CFOs and thinking about like this CEO relationship and stuff, I think the metrics that they think about that are really, really important are actually vanity metrics. And the revenue metrics that they need to be thinking about all day long are the ones that are going to make them actually get promoted. So one of the best things to do if you are in this role and trying to talk to a CFO is like, hey, not that I want budget for this, go and pilot something and show that it works. Example of that. A lot of people would ask me like, hey, how do I, ABM sounds crazy. How do I start ABM? And I always tell them, hey, look, go and find Joe and Sally on the sales team that you go to bar with, or you have great relationship with, and talk to them and ask them, what are your top 10 accounts? And they will tell you immediately what their top 10 accounts are.
Right.
They're great. Do some unscalable things with them for those top 10 accounts to win those top 10 accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And what will happen as a result of it, because if you do stuff like changing the ebook that you had and make it all about that one company that they're trying to sell to, so that you're going to have a lot more engagement with that, or instead of doing 100 people webinar, now you're doing a 5 people video thing, right, where the same industry people are together, right? All those things, like all the many of options that marketers have, applying that to those 10 deals to
right,
make it personalized and customized, you'll see a higher win rate, like guaranteed, like,
right.
So when that happens, the sales team will go back and tell to the CRO, and the CRO will talk to the CEO and CFO. And then the conversation is, hey, why are you not doing this for my entire sales team?
Why are we doing this at scale?
Right. And then you say, great idea. Like, so brilliant. Why did I think about it? Oh yeah, this is the budget I need. And then you get the budget. Like,
nice.
I think we just go about it the wrong way. We go to the CFO and say, hey, I need a budget for this event or that event. Like, I think we should just stop that. We should use pilot tests, make salespeople win, and you're going to get more budget.
Oh, that's interesting. The reverse engineering of the psychology. That's brilliant. Well, and the thing that's interesting about that is because you said we got to focus on business outcomes, right? So instead of telling them how the cookies are baked, you just give them a delicious cookie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And they will say, make more of it. And
I want more cookies. Cool. This cookie cost me X. Now, if we're going to scale it out, let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, I think it's a brilliant way to go about it.
I've also said, like, one of the best marketing tactics, the best strategy, the best thing that I feel like I've done in the last 15 years as a marketer is actually internal marketing.
Mm-hmm.
It's not external marketing as much as internal marketing. So for example, instead of giving case studies to your sales team, which hardly anybody uses, and no matter how many you create, they're going to say, well, we don't have enough, or we don't have the right ones. So like, have you looked at these 20? But they still don't know. Well, they're not focused on that. The strategy that worked was bringing a customer in the office physically. Now, right now, maybe it's remotely. So we're bringing a customer in the remote all hands every single month.
Okay.
That person, and you do a Q&A with that person and let the entire company ask them questions. Josh, I cannot tell you how many times I hear that. Do you remember what Daniel said in that all hands? He said that he wants this and this feature. Do you know what Daniel said, that he's not afraid to get promoted? Remember Jillian said that if you do this one thing, it will save her 2 hours. Let's just go build that. The amount of things that happen when you bring in a customer, I think the number one marketing strategy of all times is actually internal marketing that creates that confidence for everybody to go sell more.
Well, I love that because it builds up an internal bank of stories that can be told, right? Like the delivery in our world, right? Like we're a marketing consulting company. So in our world, our delivery team is always asking, like, what can we do to help you more? I'm like, surface the stories, like surface the work that you're doing. Tell me about it. Like bring it up in an all hands meeting, do this, do that. And I've got a bank in my head of memory that's like, oh, something triggers something. And it's like, oh, I'm going to go to that story because it sounds like that thing. Right. Yeah. And I'm lucky I have 6 years of longevity with the company. So I've got a pretty good book of stuff to go off of, but it's just all those stories that if you as a marketer are helping to surface those things, it doesn't have to be on a pretty slick or whatever, because half the time no one's looking at those things anyway. You just surface it at the right time, deliver it the right way. And what I like about storytelling as a sales rep is it actually does help the person on the other side see that you're listening to them because you're relating something to what they told you. Right. And it is bringing that empathy side of the equation into it.
Huge, man. I think, and one of the reasons that's one of the reasons I said that for me, it has been the thing, and I've seen others do it, and the people who do it become incredible marketers. So if somebody's trying to figure out how do they become an incredible marketer, like really top notch,
an incredible marketer,
the sales, the best way is like sit on the calls.
Yeah.
And listen, and gosh, like so many people are like, well, I've never been on. I'll ask them, how many? Just be honest. Like one-on-one conversation. When you ask in a group, everybody will raise their
hand. Raise their hands, right?
But you ask to them like, hey, look, just on one-on-one, like how many sales calls? Like, just to me. Don't tell to anybody. Just to me. How many sales calls have you really been on? And I mean, like 3 years, I've never been on a sales call.
Yeah. Yes. Voice of the customer, right?
Yeah. Like, so you're creating all this content, you're creating all these pain points. So you're literally doing whatever the sales team is kind of saying, but you really don't understand what they're really saying, because that may not be the real problem. You're just creating stuff, that's fluff.
Yeah. Well, I did a sales and marketing alignment workshop fairly recently, one pre-COVID and one during virtually. And the number one tip is I call it the ride along. Like, either go out in the field with your rep or sit on a call, just ride along, go listen, go absorb some of that information. It's a super simple thing you can do today.
Yeah. Love that.
So you talked about the concept of the ABM pilot and using that as the tool to get something bigger funded. It's funny, over the last few years, I'm seeing this interesting shift in ABM right now. Like, it's still a topic. It's still things that people talk about, but I feel like the acronym ABM gets so aligned with technology. And, you founded a technology company. Yeah. So I get that. You're happy about that. You're like, all right, sweet. But when we were pitching strategic projects around ABM 2-3 years ago, they weren't getting off the ground. And it was the CFO and the CEO saying, wait, you're telling me you're turning off the leads and we're doing something else? Like, they couldn't make that connection.
Right.
But now fast forward, 2-3 years later, those same projects are now getting funded. We're just not calling them ABM.
Right.
So what's going on with that? Like, what do you see?
I mean, you remember my last book, right? That's why I wrote the sequel to
right.
the first book. Like, most people remember the first book when I wrote Account-Based Marketing.
Yep.
Then last year, that's why I wrote the second book, which is ABM is B2B, period. Mm-hmm. So right. To me, that's really making a statement that 5 years from now, we won't be even talking about ABM if not we're just talking about better, smarter marketing. Right. So it's a go-to-market strategy. It is not a tactic that you do or not a technology play. I tell, my sales team brings me on the call, and the reason I'm not so much in the operational is because I'm not trying to sell them. I think every organization today that's in B2B can do ABM without technology.
Sure.
I say that all the time to everybody. And yes, thankfully, Terminus is growing. We have 1,000+ customers, all this great stuff. But the reality is that's when you want to scale it. That's when you want to do a lot more things. That's when that's a good. But just today, if somebody's wondering, well, how do I get started? Well, just pick up a target list of accounts, go talk to Joe and Sally, and close those deals.
Yeah,
Boom.
exactly.
You can do that today without a single additional technology. You already have a whole lot in your place. So I think what has changed, Josh, is companies realizing that the conversion of all those top of the funnel is just not happening as well. And the last 6 months, especially last 4 months, have been, if nothing, people realize that retention is the new acquisition. You got to retain the right customers, which means that you got to know the right customers. People have realized that selling is the new helping, right? Helping is the new selling. Instead of just sell, you got to help. Well, how are you going to retain the right customers? How are you going to help the right customers or future customers? Well, you got to know them.
Right.
And how are we going to know them when everybody says that their total addressable market is every B2B company?
Everybody.
Well, right? It's no. It's not. You I would ask this question, and I think this is a challenge for everybody. Hit Josh and I on LinkedIn and tell us the answer to this when you listen to this. Is what is your total addressable market? How many companies do you plan to sell? And if the answer is more than 1,000 or 4,000 or 5,000, you got it all wrong, because the reality is you're probably going to close 100 deals this year.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. 100 deals, or maybe 50 deals, or if you have a really gigantic, maybe 20 deals.
Unless you're Adobe.
Right. So, and that's the only, if that's where majority of the companies are, then if you're going to close 20 deals, why do you need 2,000 accounts?
Right.
You need 200 accounts. And so the level of understanding really starts with the total addressable market. So I think the big shift has been technology can make it scalable to now it's hey, it's actually a need. It went from a vitamin to that, oh, I need a painkiller.
Yeah. And you're seeing that actually. I think it's a positive trend out of COVID. And it's one of those things where the customers are having to pivot. They're being forced to get really focused. And that focus and we've seen it even with our customer base with big companies, big logos who are saying, help me help my sales team.
Yeah.
And it's basically, that's it. Help me
Yeah.
hone in on who's the right buyer, who's the right company. How do we get a good message in front of them? And it's created some really cool projects. That's, you know, when you're working with some of these big companies where you've never been able to do stuff like that, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And it's really important right now, more than ever, to recognize that the marketing person's job, the CMO's job, if you're a marketer listening to this, I believe that your job is to either incrementally or exponentially grow sales.
Mm-hmm.
There's no other thing. I don't care if you're an events person or a content person or whatever. Like, your job is to either incrementally or exponentially grow sales. And the good news is that you can incrementally or exponentially grow sales by not just focusing on demand gen, but also on pipeline velocity, but also in expansion campaigns, also an upsell and cross-sell, like that I call upserving. Your customers, if you have the right, you know, products or services, and if it's going to help them, it's serving them, upserving them, not just selling them. So this is the kind of stuff that you actually can do today, and is more important because all of that drives the business. And again, if you're a marketer, your job is to incrementally or exponentially grow sales. Figure out where you want to focus more on.
That's a great line. And it brings me back to that retention is the new acquisition. Do you think that that's working its way up into the PE world?
Oh man, I think every good, successful company, if you ever looked at HubSpot's investor deck, it's funny. I was literally the reason top of mind, I was looking at that this morning.
Nice.
If you look at Salesforce deck, like I was at Salesforce, I've looked at those before. If you look at any of the really G2 crap, G2, like all these companies that are growing really well, their retention rate is ridiculous. Like, it's almost every one of their, like, it's greater than 100% because they're upselling and cross-selling, upselling other things. So it's greater than 100%. And if you think about organizations that are struggling right now, or the companies where the retention rate is not that good, and it's not now even worse because they were a vitamin and they never became a solution to a painkiller. So they're out the window.
Yeah, it's too bad. I just feel like we don't hear those stories enough. We just keep hearing about, you know, I acquired 100 net new logos this quarter and we got, you know, $500 million in funding. You know, it's just the story you hear when you know there is sustainable, scalable, customer-centric stuff happening out there. But, you know,
I mean, I was looking at even like Salesforce. I mean, the reason they're able to meet the market expectations, if you really pay attention, is not that they're creating another $1 billion out of nothing.
Right.
They already are like at, you know, 800 million with the existing business. They know. Right. And now they're banking on the other 200 million that they can from the net new stuff.
For exponential
growth. That's how they're beating their number, because it used to like baffle me, like, wait a minute, how's this organization growing so fast, so up? And how are they able to beat their projections every quarter? Like, how is somebody even able to calculate that? And when I dug into it, and our own organization, our goal is to grow like 10 to 15% quarter over quarter. It may not seem a whole lot, but that means 40% at the end of the year. And that's a good, healthy business, right? Like, in majority of times we could completely beat that and move ahead of that. But even that is like, well, 80, 90% of that is already accounted for.
That's right.
So that's why retention is the new acquisition.
It's huge.
The bigger your organization grows, I think the more importance you start seeing of that.
Because then especially on the back end, you know, as a SaaS company, you're not making money on acquisition.
Yeah.
You're really making money on year 2, year 3, year 4, when that you're compounding the growth of revenue, but also making your margins wider.
Yep.
So
changes the game.
Compounding effect. That's super cool. Well, what else is going on in your world? Anything else you've been talking about that's interesting?
Well, I don't know, man. I think to me, this year is kind of the refining, pruning year. I think in many ways, I feel like for companies that don't have sound foundation are seeing a negative effect.
Yeah.
There are a lot of great talent in the market right now available for no fault of their own out in the marketplace. It's a great time to hire incredible people. So I'm always connecting with people and learning. If it makes sense, we hire and, create positions and stuff. And I think ultimately, I feel we're also personally, everybody's trying to figure out like what the future of work looked like.
Yeah.
And we just did a poll internally as an organization and realized that nobody really needs to full-time every day come to like physical place,
It's
which
weird, isn't it?
was a sought after thing.
Yeah.
So we're doing like Friday half day off just for the summer. Now we've extended for the entire year. We're doing like this $250 for everybody to make their home space better. If you want a fish tank, then get a fish tank. If that
Very
helps
cool.
you get through the day.
Very cool.
We're trying to do Uber Eats to the company. We're trying to give them different skill sets if they want to take training or learning or development or meditation, like whatever. So it's really interesting. I think the work of this is going to change the way we think about work. So I'm excited to actually see some of these changes happen.
It is exciting. I think commercial real estate's going to struggle here for a little bit, but it is exciting. It'll get reimagined. You know, someone will disrupt the space and it'll get reimagined, and I think it'll be good for everybody. One last topic before I let you go. So, you know, I kind of consider you the godfather of personal branding, you know, kind of going out there, starting a movement of Flip My Funnel and all that kind of stuff. What do you think about what seems to be this year, especially, maybe it's because people are working from home, the LinkedIn personal branding thing is exploding. What's your take on all that? It seems like it is.
Yeah. Why do you say it is?
Well, I think there's more people jumping in. You've got more, you know, quote unquote experts who are pounding their chest and saying that personal branding is the new, you know, methodology to sell or whatever it is. Yeah. And there's just more of that chatter out there. So I'm just curious if it is because people have more time because they're sitting at home. They're not afraid of someone looking over their shoulder and saying, what do you do on LinkedIn? Or if it's really the new world.
That's interesting because I never looked at it as personal branding. I think to me, it's more, to me, that's how I learn. To put it on another way. Like I do these interviews because I'm just a curious person and I know that that's how I learn. That's how my mind works.
That's great.
To me, I do interviews like these and stuff because with our existing customers or future customers, a lot of times to close deals, like straight up.
For sure.
It's like, all right, we're trying to close the CM, like so-and-so deal. Let me go and interview that person and start building relationship. We may close the deal now, maybe not close. So full on transparency. I've done that and it has worked and has built the best relationship too in the process.
That's great.
So to me, the goal matters. If the goal is to get views and likes,
back to the vanity metrics.
Well, it's a vanity metrics and a disappointing way of looking at success. So when I see people saying that, whoa, I got 18 million views in the last, like those, I mean, to me, that means like nothing. Like really nothing. Because I can literally copy paste those things and start getting a ton of views and talk about like my childhood to like that's what you do. But real power is when you can start creating a community around it and then people get to know you and then you're able to engage and create value. So it's actually the richness of these conversations actually happens in a smaller community, which is why like I actually, you know, we have Flip My Funnel going. I have a private marketing group that people pay $10 a month to be part of because that's where we're having like this depth conversation. We do like every Friday we're doing like, hey, how do you do podcast? How do you do like just how marketers can get 1% better each week is the goal. Very cool. Of that. So I'm starting that and it's already 150 people in it and it's fun across the board. So to me, it's less about personal branding for the sake of branding. It's about knowing what your niche is and being really good at it so that now you have a community. Otherwise, you'll end up being a commodity.
I like it. Niche wins and community. Those are good messages to leave people with.
Yeah.
All right, Sangram, it was really good to see you. Thanks so much.
Anytime, Josh. Thank you. Thanks for everybody for listening as well.
Absolutely.